Thank you so very much. We're in the Encouraging Words class, and for those of you who have been with us, just kind of reminding you, the first week, remember, Pete Blank did Power of the Class. That sounds pretty good. What did we really do? Family Feud. Yeah, we spent the whole period playing Family Feud, and the golfers won this one. All right, then the next week, Brian Pruitt talked to us about the peace of God and where we find peace in God and what that peace really means. Then Swade talked to us about the participation in Christianity, what it means to really be an active part and not just depending so much on grace. And then last week, Steve Nowlin did for us the pivot point between faith and belief. I'm going to be talking about a purpose of the gospel. Don't have enough confidence to say it is the purpose of the gospel, but I will say that of the many purpose, is that the plural of purpose? Of the many purpose, I believe one of the purposes is what we're going to talk about today. You look at what these guys do, and I'm in pretty good shape as an educator because when I look at what these guys do, you got Pete Blank, who's in human resources, and so I got to thinking, if I attended one of his seminars and got all excited and motivated and thrilled and my water broke, then I could go see Brian Pruitt. And while I'm there dilating, Swade could come in and give me a lobotomy, and then Steve Nowlin could hire me to work with Jefferson County. So I'm pretty well covered with all that. But it's fun to get the call, to do a class. It's fun to get the call to do communion. I love doing communion. I call that the communicator. I love being the communicator because you get the call and you get all fired up. I mean, you are ready. You want to do it. You're at this spiritual high right here, and you want to get everybody else that spiritual high. You feel like you've been to the mountain, and your face is aglow, and so you want to share that with everybody. So you try to fabricate a communion that's going to get everybody involved and get them just as spiritually high as you are. And so you tell the congregation when you get there, take your right hand and grab your neighbor's left foot. And while you're doing that, sopranos, if you'll start singing a new song, it thrills my soul through, start doing that. And then basses, if you can start the Hallelujah chorus at letter D, for the Lord God, and then get the altos doing, Kumbaya, my Lord, And then the tenors, if you just go fa la 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 la, doing all that together. And then when you get your cracker, if you'll just kind of wait and crumble it up into your juice like cornbread and buttermilk, and then see if you can wring the person's mouth behind you, then that's going to be a real spiritual experience. And, and we're all sheep here. We're all faithful sheep here, and we're going to do what we're told to do, most of us. Now, my pew partners in the back, we don't participate in the extracurricular stuff. We're pretty much just passing ammunition type folks, so we don't get involved with that. But you do this as a communicator to get this done, and you're just thinking, oh man, everybody's so excited. And when you come off the pulpit, they're going to say, I looked up in the sky, and behold, it was the portals of heaven opened up, and I saw a myriad of angels in choir going, ah. And instead, you sit down, and somebody says, what was that? What was that all about? And so, I think it happens not only to the volunteers, but also the official clergy, because I remember one Mother's Day, and I don't think it was Wayne, I don't think it was Craig, I think it was Doug Peters. Doug Peters got all inspired on a Mother's Day, and he said, these women are back there working in the nursery. They're just working in the nurseries. We need to get the guys back there to do the nursery. And I'm thinking, I got 6 boys. I've raised 6 boys. I can do this. Now, I got a confession. My confession is, the under 2s, they're kind of worthless. They can't do anything. They can't play tuba. They can't jump through hoops. They can't, do anything. And I thought, I don't want to go to the 2 years old. Now, that's with the exception of the newborn. Now, there's nothing nicer than a newborn after the bath when they smell good and they're in your hand and they're kind of snoring and their little belly's moving up and down. Now, that's nice, but they grow out of that to that kind of range between the 2s. But the older 2s, man, they're priceless. They are absolutely priceless. You can teach them some tricks. You can, especially the terrible 2s. I love the terrible 2s, because you can tell them to put your right foot here, put your left foot here, Put your hand right here, and then you can knock everything off of here, here, and here, you know. And those twos, you can see their little brain going, and they say, yeah, yeah. And they got it. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to get me a terrible two and send him home, and that night find out that Mama and Daddy said, what happened to my baby? And they're going to put him up for adoption. That's what I was going to do. But I get to the over twos, and there's no vacancy. So I have been weighed in the scales and found wanting, and I have been sent to the under two class. So I have to go screaming to the under two class, and so I'm headed to the under two class to see what's going on. And I get there. I get there to the under two. Now, you know, I'm trying to make some kind of connection here, so I try to come up with an icebreaker that, you know, me and this little guy that I've just met, that we can kind of talk about and break the ice and be friends, this kind of thing. So I ask him a real simple question. How much, if any, influence do you think the existential philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre had on mid-20th century Christian publications, including but not limited to articles in the Gospel Advocate and our Christian Chronicle, Bible commentaries and hymn books, including but not limited to Sacred Selection and Great Songs of the Church? Well, you can imagine what he did. There was just no coming back from that one. So anyway, finally I got to thinking, you know, this is Mother's Day, and back in that we had the tradition of handing out the roses, remember that? All right. Never had enough, so somebody had to run out to Food World during church and get some more, and they had to kind of lengthen the time to get there, and then would have a testimony about somebody's mother, which was always really nice to hear how great the moms were, and then we'd have an exegesis on every word in Proverbs 31, and I'm thinking, this is where I'm going to die. You know, I will meet my maker here. Anyway, some daddy comes up, well, let's sing a song. You know, and I'm thinking, less than 2 years old, we're going to sing a song. You know what? We could sing the Mozart Requiem in German all the way through, and they're not going to be any better off. But fortunately, the dad comes up with a classic. Oh, be careful, little eyes. Y'all know that one? Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Well, you know, my new main man's looking at me like, you know, those body parts are kind of throwing me for a loop. Can you help me out on this? Now, it wasn't a good idea, but, you know, he didn't know. And so I'm taking his hands and saying, oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. I mean, he doesn't know. He's not going to know. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. You know, oh, be careful, little feet, where you go. And, man, he and I are grooving, and he's thinking, man, oh, Guy's got it happening. He knows what's going on. All right, so we're having a good time, but then all of a sudden it seems as if every septic tank in the world has exploded because something has gone terrifically wrong in this room, and then we have one guy says, I guess it's that time. All right, now, I'm not familiar with that time, and I'm not really familiar with the lesson plans for the under twos, but that time is starting to scare me, and the best thing I can figure out is that time means that every week the nursery women bring in a skunk, they scare it to death after it's eaten a possum that's just had a bean burrito, because it is getting really rich inside this room. And this guy says, well, I guess we'll have to change them. Well, you know, I'm thinking, change them? I own trombones. I don't own a hazmat outfit. And I don't know that if I want to be involved in that or not. So anyway, I think of that, and I remember that statement in 3 Men and a Baby, that Tom Selleck says, how can something so small create so much of something so disgusting? That's what he says. And I wonder at times if God ever looks at us and says that very same thing. How can something so small, meaning mankind, how can something so small as man create so much of something so disgusting as the sins in our life? And so could it be that one of the purposes of the gospel is to show us how not to create so much of something that is so disgusting? Now, in considering that, I'd like to go back just a few weeks ago when I was at Auburn, 1974. That was just a few weeks ago. And I'm not going to tell you which one I am, except I'm not the one with the fro. That's not me. But anyway, all of us music majors, we had to take educational psychology. And so in the educational psychology class, We did Freud. We talked about Freud, and all you other education folks, you had to do that too. You talked about Skinner, behavior modification, then Maslow, the hierarchy, and then, development, and then Pavlov and all that. And I'm thinking, I don't need to know nothing about grammar, no kid psychology or nothing else, because I want to be a musician. That's what I want to be. Well, I want to be a I want to be a band director. So what I want to be, and I don't need to know that kind of stuff like that. But one day we did, in fact, go over a guy named Lawrence Kohlberg. And I found Lawrence Kohlberg very interesting, and I wanted us to look a little bit at what Lawrence Kohlberg has done. He developed what he called the stages of moral development. Now, 2 disclaimers. Number 1, my intentions are not to preach Kohlberg, but to use Kohlberg to help me understand better what Jesus is saying. I have done this in a class before, and some good Christian came up and said, this is a Bible class. We need to be talking Bible. We don't need to be talking something other than Bible. And I would say, well, does that rule out commentaries? Does that rule out articles, beneficial books, that kind of thing? So I don't want to be preaching Kohlberg. I'm not preaching Kohlberg, but trying to preach Kohlberg is something that would help us understand Jesus a little bit. And Roman numeral B, even though Kohlberg did not live a perfect life, his theory on moral development might direct us to a better understanding of the biblical principles by which we live. Kohlberg committed suicide. He committed suicide, and somebody used that to me, and I inferred from the statement that, well, if he committed suicide, then anything he said was worthless. But I think what Kohlberg said has some things to say that will help us. And so Kohlberg had 6 levels of moral development, 3 stages. The first stage was pre-conventional. And what that meant, when I studied this, I thought, I don't understand convention, what we're talking about, but now it makes more sense. The conventional rules, the normal rules that by which people should live. And so at the first level, it's obedience and punishment orientation, which means, as a child, when I would bite my sister and mother was around, I would get punished. Okay, so I began to realize if I bite my sister when mother's around, I'm going to get punished, so I'm not going to bite my sister when mother's around. Now, the next level is, if she's not around, I can get by with it. But what I began to learn was that, it doesn't even work then. We get a little bit older and we understand more of the principle about not biting your sister when your mother's around or not around. And then you get older and you get to the conventional level, and there at the conventional level is the interpersonal norms, just like you're in grammar school now, elementary school, and you bite Francis Miles and the teacher gets mad for some reason, but Francis deserved it, but the teacher doesn't understand that, and so you begin to realize that, okay, all right, maybe I don't need to be biting Francis Miles, and then you get to the next level that if you in a boxing match and you bite somebody's ear, then they're going to arrest you, Mike Tyson, for doing that, and you realize that there's a whole set of order. There's a whole set of other laws out there that guide man. Our founding fathers called it the natural laws, the natural laws. And then if you ever get to that level that you understand that, then there's a higher level that is after the conventional level, and that is the level of social contract orientation. In other words, this is good for the society to do what we're doing. And then finally, the highest level then is the universal ethics principle, where you realize it's not a matter of the law, it's a matter of this is what we're supposed to be doing, this is right. And so the people that say, consider the people in Nazi Germany, some of them realized that. Some of them, however, stopped at the 4th level that said, this is our government, this is what our governments do and we have to support our government. But others said, I believe in the government, but what they're doing can't be right. And so they understood that there was a higher law than that. And when I look back at my life, I began to realize, well, that's sort of what I had done, I think. And of course there's more to Kohlberg than this, but more of what he talks about too, more of the things that he talks about is that you move in and out of these levels, these stages, but when you do move, it's all based on what you've learned before. So if you learn not to bite when you're young, then when you get older, you understand that. You're not going to violate some of the things that you've learned. You develop at a higher level. And I got to thinking about, this is what I think the Bible is talking about when we look at the instructions that we have been given from the Bible, these commandments, these laws that we are to follow. And this is, I think, what most of us have been taught in those that had the fortune to attend church. And so you think, how many commandments are there in the Bible? And if you look up, there were 613 commandments listed in the Torah. Now, Torah is a general word that means either the first 5 books of the Old Testament, or they mean the whole set of books, including commentaries on these books and what's expected out of you. So this article said there were 613. Another one said from the Christian Assemblies that there was 1,050 New Testament commands. So that gets us right at, 1,703 commands that we are to follow. But you wonder, when you look at what Paul was saying in Galatians, when he said in verse 14, the whole law is made complete in this one commandment, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then Jesus went on to say in Matthew 22, when he was asked what's the greatest commandment, he said, love the Lord your God and then love your neighbor yourself. And he said in verse 40, all the law and the writings of the prophets depend on these 2 commandments. So could it be that those 1,700 commandments are forcing us or are directing us to a higher level of understanding? And you look in Matthew 5, and it says, don't think I have come to destroy the law of Moses or the teachings of the prophet. I have not come to destroy them, but to bring about what they said. Now, for me, in my background, the way I studied this, I separated the 2 sentences. I thought, well, the first part is that he's not going to destroy the commandments, and the second part is he was just saying, I am the Messiah. I am the Messiah. But I got to contemplating later on in study to bring about what they said. That Greek word is plerosia. And so that means it's the infinitive form of accomplish, realize, fulfill. That's what that's about. So Jesus is saying, I came to accomplish this, I came to realize this, I came to fulfill this. It's also used in the same root word is used in other translations to mean complete, perfect, consummate, set forth fully. So when I had the opportunity to read Randy Harris's book, Living Jesus, he said what Jesus was saying there is, I haven't come to tell you to be lawless, to get rid of the law. I want you to understand a deeper understanding of the law. In other words, we're trying to push higher and understand that it's not just a matter of breaking a law, but this is really how you should treat people. And so could deeper understanding mean, with Randy Harris, what Kohlberg was saying, operate at a post-conventional level? And so Randy Harris makes the comparisons throughout the rest of that chapter and talks about the conventional law, you shall not murder. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, and the fuller understanding is you don't even hate. You don't even hate your neighbor. He says, you shall not commit adultery. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, and the full understanding is you don't even lust after someone in your heart. The conventional law says you cannot divorce with a certificate. Jesus says, love your neighbor, and the fuller understanding is keep a deep faithfulness. It says, do not break your oath. And you got to realize some of these did not come actually from the Bible, but from the law of Moses, but from the Torah and the Talmud. Do not break your oath, but keep your vows to the Lord. And Jesus said, love your neighbor, and don't even swear by anything, but let your yes be yes and your no be no. Keep your integrity. And then he said the conventional law was eye for an eye. And that was what you see here, lex talionis, limit yourself to whatever was taken. It was not, if you do something to me, I got to do something back to you. It was not retaliate, but it was a limiter. If you take one of my goats, I can only get back a goat. You know, if you take one of my goats, I don't get 3 goats back to show you. But this was saying, if you do retaliate, limit it to what was taken from you. So Jesus says, though love your neighbor and don't even retaliate. Love your neighbor, it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. You know, I got to love you, but I don't have to like you. Well, Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Love even your enemy. And this is what, that was a fuller understanding of it. So, as we said, not all the laws that Jesus is addressing here are from the law of Moses. Some were interpretations either from the Torah, the Talmud, or the oral traditions. That means that in some cases it is easier to see how the conventional laws that the law of Moses told us would be the foundation for developing the higher level of loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. So the law, you shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, that was leading us to you should love your neighbor as yourself. You wouldn't do this to yourself. And so, how can something so small create so much of something so disgusting? Who knows? Who knows why we do this? Could it be, though, that we've missed one of the purposes of the gospel to lead us to a higher level of moral development? Now, we can blame a lot of things. Could it be that as youths, we were not taught the conventional laws? We weren't taught the conventional laws. Maybe we didn't understand what we were taught. Or maybe we didn't buy into it. We didn't accept that. Or a myriad of reasons why we did not accept those laws or believe in those laws. But do understand this. Jesus has said, I tell you that if you are no more obedient than the teachers of the law and the Pharisees, you will never enter into the kingdom of heaven. So our mission, what we are to do, we are to be more obedient. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to try to move to that higher level and be more obedient. But how? I offer some suggestions. As my percussion section says, this is not rocket surgery. It is not rocket surgery. Number one, study. 2 Timothy 2:15, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of God. Pray. James 1 talks about if a man wants wisdom, if he asks in faith, it will be given to him. We instruct and we be instructed. That means that if you look at 1 Timothy 2, it's talking about the older men are to be this, and the older women are to be this. And it says, and then the older men, the older women are to instruct, to teach the younger men, the younger women to be this way. And then we are to encourage and be encouraged. That's what we come to do. We encourage each other. Hebrews 12:1 says, seeing that we are surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every encumbrance and run with diligence the race that is set before us. So Paul is encouraging us. And even in Hebrews 10, it's talking about not forsaking the assembly, but coming together to encourage each other. So we encourage each other. That's why we fabricate a communion service that doesn't make sense, because we really want to encourage you. That's why the ministers of the 80s and 90s talked about cheap grace, that grace that we have from God is not cheap, and that we just shouldn't go on sinning, that we should get more grace. This is why Brett talks about the frozen chosen, because it's more than just being a Christian and not doing anything. That's why Swade talked about the Lipitor Christianity. We can't take a pill for it, and that's why Josh Patrick, when he spoke to us, talked about moralistic therapeutic deism, because these are all ways that we avoid the idea of moving up the scale. So we encourage each other. We have these encouraging words that we do with each other. We do this so that we can achieve a purpose of the gospel to overcome so much of something that is disgusting. And so this is why we come together. This is why we have these encouraging words with each other, so that we can attain to that higher level of that purpose, of one of the purposes of the gospel, to reach that higher level of Christianity. And so, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift His countenance upon you and give you peace. And remember that we all, with unveiled faces, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into that same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit. And remember that now the God of peace that brought forth from the dead the great shepherd of the sheep, has brought forth us and has led us, has guided us and equipped us into the good works to do His will, working in us that which is pleasing in His sight through Jesus Christ. To Him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Thank you for being here.